We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is the Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast, with Bob Cooke and Jacci Jones.
Welcome back to the next episode of the Therapy Show Behind Closed Doors with myself, Jacci Jones, and the wonderful Mr. Bob Cooke. And what we're going to be talking about in this episode, which is 191, we've passed the 190 now and we're hurtling towards 200.
Oh,
is 5 values that underpin a successful psychotherapy outcome. But no doubts we'll do more than 5.
well, get through. So I'll start with the first value, shall I, on this
Go for it.
whole day?
Yes.
But anyway, okay, so I'm going to pick one from TA,
Okay.
which I wouldn't say it's the, I like this value. I think about it in other language, but I'm going to use TA language, and that is I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's the value that people, whatever, are okay, and we're okay, and through healthy connection and accounting for the other and vice versa, is a value I like, and it's a value to aspire for.
Yeah.
Is it there in your top?
Absolutely. I
5,
was thinking there's a lot in social media about mental health now, and there has been for quite a few years. And there's one thing that always kind of grates on me, that it's okay to not be okay.
Oh, okay.
Whereas,
Say a bit more.
well, for me, we're all okay at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? That's the way I like to look at things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our state of mind and, the way that we feel can shift moment to moment, dependent on the situation that we're in, the people that we're with, what's going. But that's part of the human experience. So I love the I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah, and of course in Catholicism, we have a completely different view in terms of values, where people are born not okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the opposite of the Catholicism mantra, that we are born. I think it's really an important one to think about, because however bizarre a person's behavior, if you go back in terms of the context when they made that behavior, it's fully understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even though some people's behaviors might not be okay in that frame of reference, it doesn't mean they're not okay.
Yeah.
In that
And I think that's really important when you say we might think it's not okay in that frame of reference. Societally, it might not be acceptable, the behavior that they're displaying at that time, but that doesn't mean that they're not okay, and that they're doing the best that they can with what they've got available at that time. And that's okay.
That's okay. And in transaction analysis world, we both had that as our first training, I think, and the first psychological model certainly was mine. And one of the first books I was introduced to, I think did I read it before I started TA? That's an interesting question. I might have done on one of my many airport visits where I might have picked this book up. I'm not so sure, but certainly did in the TA world. And that's Eric Burns' prodigy, Tom Harris, who wrote the book I'm Okay, You're Okay. And, it's a little paperback, and I think it's still,
I've got it somewhere. Yeah,
I think it's still in the sort of top, I don't know, 100 books people, in terms of sales and things like that. It's very accessible. I'm okay, you're okay, and it's talks about obviously the value of I'm okay, you're not okay in terms of an existential life choice, and in the fact that in that book they talk about 4 existential life positions. I'm okay, you're okay, what we're talking about here as a very important value. And then I'm okay, you're not okay. I'm not okay, you are okay. and the most unhealthy, if you want to put it that way. I'm not okay and you're not okay. And that we, according to our script and our psychological place in life, we move around that quadrant, if you like. But I'm okay, you're okay is the most healthy position. And the book is it's a nice book. I mean, it talks a lot about these existential positions, but also talks about the basic positions in transactional analysis frame of reference. So if you want to learn about basic TA, it's a good book. And certainly, I like that. And I think Tom Harris puts it on a sort of quadrant, those 4 existential life positions. And it's a very accessible book.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I've dipped in and out of it. I was just thinking then I might actually pull it out and have another read of it. I've got lots of books that I dip in and out of, but whether I read them from cover to cover is a different matter.
I think it was written about 1972. I can't remember.
Yeah.
A long, long time ago. It isn't one of Eric Burns' books. Eric Burns' 5 books.
If you
there we are in
on
blue.
YouTube, then you can actually see a copy of it. Yeah.
Manchester City colours.
Oh, he's off.
Pale blue. The one I bought sort of 20 years ago was in yellow.
1973, it says that it was written.
Not far out.
Yeah.
See, the first TA book was bought in Transactional Psychotherapy was written in 1962, the same time that Doctor Who came on television.
You're full of useful information, Bob.
Yeah. And Coronation, Top of the Pops and Coronation Street, things like that. And then 1964 was the sort of book that really catapulted TA to the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And that was a very well-known book called Games People Play. Talk about repetitive patterns that we all play in life that culminate in a script. And it was a very, very important book because it sold really well and it brought TA to the forefront of many people's front rooms. And then in 1967, you have that wonderful book on principles of group treatment, which talks about how you do TA for the first time properly in terms of methods. And there weren't many methods, by the way. And then, of course, you have in 1970 when he died, didn't he? Eric Byrne of a double heart attack. He was writing 2 books, Sex and Human Loving, and what was the other one he was dying just as he died? Can't remember, but those were those books. And then after that, I say Tom Harris, who was a prodigy or a follower of a lot of the TA thinking, wrote that book we're talking about here. And I do like that value.
Yeah.
Regardless of behavior, that, in essence, we're okay and other people are okay, even though our behaviors might come from a different place.
And again, I think I like that quadrant, and I use it quite a lot in therapy with clients. But having an awareness of how we can shift ego states and linking it into that, do you know what I mean? I'm okay, you're okay, which is the one that we want to be. I'm okay, you're not. And looking at the situations that we find ourselves in, where we're either in a one-up position or a one-down position, and being conscious of that. I just think as human beings, we can all use that to our advantage in so many situations.
It's a good value to aspire to, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, over to you, the second one. Have you got one on your list?
For me, it touches on a podcast that we did. I'm not sure whether it was the last one or the one before, where it was about kindness and compassion and non-judgment. And yeah, I suppose it links in with I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah, we talked, didn't we, on the podcast around kindness.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about compassion and kindness and also integrity and self-respect, I'm sure, in that podcast as well.
Absolutely.
But I do think compassion is a really important one. And, you know, it's, I could lose sight of, I certainly couldn't remember how many clients I've been with who have come in and said they want to be compassionate to themselves as a starting point for the things they wanted to change. In fact, I was doing a mental health assessment today, and this person said the things I'd like to change was he wanted to move from self-sabotaging himself. He wanted to be more compassionate with himself as well.
Yeah.
And so compassion is I know, perhaps it's not a value you were talking about, but I think kindness goes with compassion.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they're values I hold very dear.
Yeah. And like you said, integrity and, personal boundaries and, keeping ourselves safe and self-care and all those things I think are really important. Yeah. It took me a while to realize, and I have little insights every so often where I think, oh yeah, that's what's happening. When you spoke then about self-sabotage, up until I was well into my training at the institute, it was always they made me feel that way, or that caused me to feel this way, rather than taking responsibility. So I think when somebody comes and you're doing a mental health assessment and they're talking about sabotaging themselves, that's a real big awareness as a starting point, that they are sabotaging themselves and things aren't being done to them.
Yeah, and I think it takes quite a while often people to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think it's when that happens is a really pivotal part of the therapeutic process, isn't it?
Yeah. And we can still get hooked into it that, oh, well, if they hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have reacted that way. Again, depending on where we are in that moment and on that I'm okay, you're okay spectrum. But yeah.
No, I think it's important that you're talking about this, and that's certainly a value I aspire to in terms of kindness, compassion, genuineness, sense of integrity, respect for other people, and they all go together in a way.
Yeah. And again, ultimately that provides safety and security and stability and all those things that we aim for within the therapy process.
Good. Number 3, I mean, you've included it here, but I think respect is an important value, because if you respect somebody, or if you can come from you're okay position, respect will come with that. You're taking account of them. It's a place where means that you're far more likely to be non-judgmental and far more likely to be able to take account and listen to their stories.
Yeah.
Respect is important, I think.
I think it empowers the client to open up more as well, if we're respectful for what they're saying, even if it goes against our own beliefs and how we feel, that we have that respect, that's how they feel. They're gonna be more open to being vulnerable within the therapy room.
Certainly. Another value, a sense of ethics.
But yeah, that's a big one for me.
I mean, we could I read a book, I think it was called The Ethical Practitioner. I haven't written a book, but I like that title. But if we take it generally, I wouldn't want my therapist not to have a sense of ethics at the center of their personality.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember putting in ethics and looking for the definition many years ago of what ethics was, if you like, and it's a standard of how you live your life. Basically, I mean, you could have different definitions, but that's how a healthy standard for living our lives.
Yeah.
And as therapists, that should be at the center of our practice, really.
Yeah. Professionally and personally.
Oh, they go together.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they should go together. Perhaps they may not always go together, but they should go together. You walk the talk. And I would want my therapist always to have a healthy standard of practice, a healthy ethical stance.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you go to any regulating body, there will be a set of standards of ethics that we're supposed to follow. It's because they put that value of ethicality at such a high premium.
Yeah, quite right. We're dealing with vulnerable people, aren't we? We need to be ethical and practice safely.
Yeah, and I think that as a client, we should definitely expect that.
Yeah. I've never been asked if I'm qualified or if I'm insured or anything by any of my clients.
Have you had after your description of yourself, though, not only description of you perhaps, but have you put any sort of letters after your name, like whatever, I don't know, BACP, UKCP, training transaction analysis, anything? Like I was thinking when you trained at the Institute, you probably described yourself.
I say that I'm qualified in transactional analysis, but I
Yes.
don't state anything, do you know what I mean, formally, let's put it that way. And
Oh,
my
true, but
certificate's up on the wall and so's my insurance thing, but nobody's actually physically asked me if
I
I'm
mean, that's
qualified.
interesting. And I still think that people hold transaction analysis in such a high regard that they may think that that's part of the process,
Yeah,
that you are ethical and have a high standard of practice.
yeah,
Well, it's interesting that people don't ask you. I understand that. And I think and probably in my 38-year career, I could count on my hand and anybody's ever asked me that.
I think it's a given with you, Bob, running the institute and the training centre and everything else that I think most
But I
people
have an
would.
ethical standard. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I do think transaction analysis is seen as a highly ethical model
yeah,
with this existential ideas of I'm okay, you're okay at the heart of the whole model. I do think people look up to TA in that frame of reference. But there are many books written on ethics. But I think it's such an important value that maybe, this isn't about linear order, what linear order they should be in. But, maybe it's at the top.
yeah,
It's certainly competing for what my top value anyway, that a high ethical, healthy standard practice.
yeah.
Over to you then, another one.
Commitment to growth.
Oh, yes, yes. Say a little bit more on that.
Well, continued professional development and keeping up to date with things, reading the many books that I've got on my shelf, supervision, all those sort of things, that once you've got your qualification, then it continues. I've studied and learnt and qualified in different things other than transactional analysis from my own curiosity. I think it's important that we don't stay stagnant, that we do continue to develop as therapists.
And I think that's such an important thing there, that we see professional and personal development as essential to the continuance of our practice.
Yeah.
And I think I would be surprised if I went to a therapist that wasn't continually striving to enhance their, their career, and also linking a importance, if you like, on reflection of their inner world.
Definitely, because as a career, or as a job, if you're self-employed and working in private practice, it's quite isolating. If you're employed by somebody, or you're working in a building and there's lots of therapists there, then you've got other people to discuss things with and bounce ideas off. But when you're on your own, I think talking with like-minded people and being around similar people is a must.
Certainly is, and I think you mean well with this, and I'll extend it a bit. A belief in the value of positive human growth.
Yeah.
Is really, or a commitment, or whatever way you want to put it, that is essential. I think high ethics, a belief in positivity and human growth, must be surely at the center of the value system of the psychotherapist I'd want to go to.
Yeah, definitely.
What about things like, I don't know if they're values, are they, but curiosity, a sense of inquiring.
I've got that down as one of mine. It was a toss-up whether I was going to say that next or whatever. I think that's a big thing.
Well, the sense of wanting to know a person's story.
Yeah.
A sense of admiring a person's life story, how they become the way they are, a sense of curiosity rather than judgment.
Yes.
I think are essential, because I don't want a therapist that judges me. However, I do want a therapist that is curious about me, and curious about how I've become the way we are, and curious about how we could together resolve issues. I'd want that type of therapist, not somebody that is defining and judging.
Definitely. Do you think it's important that therapists share part of who they are as well?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if we go back to our let's say Freud as the sort of father of modern psychology, his early sort of methodology or theory, if you want to put it that way, of looking at early therapeutic processes was psychoanalysis. And at the center of psychoanalysis, of course, is the concept of neutrality, and the concept of the opposite of sharing. That you keep yourself neutral, you keep yourself as a neutral figure, you keep yourself outside the relationship, so there can be no contamination. So from where we started to where we are in 2024, we have a complete, what is called, relational turn. In other words, moving from that way of thinking now to a very different way of thinking. And that is the relationship between the therapist and the client is the major process for therapeutic change or cure, if you like. And I know that's a continuum, because, from sort of 1888 to 2024, but it's a very different way of thinking about things. So, long way of answering your question, I'm more in the favor of using the relationship, and that might mean in certain circumstances sharing part of yourself. But I have a guiding principle that goes with that, and that is I will only share myself or think about sharing my sense of self if I believe it has a clinical, there's a positive clinical aspect to it. In service of the client.
Yes, definitely.
So I will think about why I am doing this. So, for example, if I chose to share, I'm a Manchester City supporter. For example, it's very simple like that.
Yep.
Then I'd have to think, well, is this because I want to, stroke my own ego about the fact that I love football and the fact that Manchester City are doing so well, and we could go on. Or I've made a judgment that in the sense of connection, building up a robust therapeutic relationship, in the sense of mutuality, in the sense that the client never had a father that shared anything with themselves. So the client felt missed, felt not accounted for. So if I've got a clinical reason where there may be a reparative experience for the client,
Yeah.
then I would share it.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I think, you know, before I started doing my training or whatever, I always thought that therapists had all the shit together, excuse my French, do you know what I mean? That they coped with anything that life thrown at them and everything. And now being a psychotherapist, I know that that's not true, and we feel things just like everybody else does.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Which leads me into, I don't know if we're on to the fifth value, but anyway, leads me on to another value, which is a belief in humanity and in sharing a collective humanity, which if you might want to say a collective relationship. That's the curative factor.
Yeah.
And I think it has got that caveat that we would only share in service of the client.
Yes.
And the
Definitely.
problem comes when you have the narcissistic therapist that may share things in service of their own ego rather than in the service of the client.
Yeah.
And there are far too many narcissistic therapists, and they may never know they are, by the way.
Yeah. I think there's a fine line in oversharing. You know, like it's like in my therapy room. I've got one picture there that is got my son on, but most people don't even know that that's my son. It's quite a neutral space. I'm not in the room, if that makes sense. And I was conscious of doing that when I was working from home.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't feel like they've just rocked up in my front room and we're just sitting having a chat. There is a professional persona.
And if you want to take that to the nth degree, I remember back in the day, and we're talking about 30 or 40 years ago at least, when I was doing seminars every Friday night for the public to come to, and we were talking about psychotherapeutic issues and models and techniques. And I brought a couple of drama therapists in to talk for 2 hours about drama therapy and various other things. And they insisted that every picture was off the room of my therapy room, that there was nothing at all on the room. And when I said why, they said, "Oh, we don't want any of our anybody in the room projecting things onto these pictures, do we?" Now, I actually think everything's grist to the mill, but what they were talking about is what you're talking about, which is cultivating a neutral space.
Yeah.
Which I think is important to think about in the process of we're just talking about here.
Definitely.
And in the other value of humanity, we're all humans and collective relationship, all we're just talking about, the importance of therapists to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Which shows that we're all human.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a perfect psychotherapist, thank goodness.
No. And to own up to that if we do make a mistake.
The best thing and the most effective thing that we could do for our clients is do exactly that.
Yeah.
Because the client will see will see the therapist as human, but it'll be a fantastic normalizing experience for the client, I believe.
I believe so too, and take the relationship onto a different level as well. That, do you know what I mean? It's definitely that I'm okay, you're okay. There's not that one-upmanship. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Have you got another value there? No.
Flexibility, I think, is one for me.
Rather than rigidity and
reassessing and making sure that we're still on the right track. And we have a treatment plan and we know where we're going, but sometimes that needs to be adapted or modified. So being flexible.
What a wonderful value, seriously. flexibility, creativity, the
Yeah.
ability to be able to open our hearts to different options and different thoughts and different ways of doing things. What a wonderful value that is.
Thank you. I like it.
Oh, absolutely, because it means that we're opening our hearts and minds to different ways of being, and what a wonderful modeling experience that is.
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, this is the only way you can do things. Now, I've taught many, many times for 4 years about how important I see contracts, and the
Yes.
contracts are central in terms of contractual theory to the TA person. However, what I don't like, by the way, is TA therapists who rigidly stick to contracts amongst, in terms of anything else.
Yeah.
And I believe that that isn't effective, particularly if you just stick rigidly to contracts made. I think it's important to see contracts made in terms of the process. So you've got flexibility, you've got creativity, you've got the opening of hearts and minds within the contract process. And I think that's really important.
Because it's therapy is a journey. Do you know what I mean? When I look at how I worked with, some of my clients in the early days to how I worked with them after 12 months or 2 years, it's completely different because our relationship has deepened and it's changed. So we need to be flexible.
Flexible, creative, opening our hearts and minds up to the process of change. And even though you think change might not look like this or feel like this, if it's on the road to what the client needs or wants, that's the way we go.
Yeah. And what's effective for the client?
Yeah, what's
Do
effective?
the same thing over and over. If it's not effective, then it's not good. Yeah.
No. And too many therapists stick to dogma. They stick to their theoretical models, like the theoretical model was a god or goddess. That's where often therapy goes really deeply wrong.
Yeah.
And for effective change, we need to have the value. I think the value of flexibility and creativity and opening our hearts is such a wonderful, value in the template of a psychotherapist, which is humane and has a sense of I'm okay, you're okay, and meets the clients where they are rather than where they think they are or should be.
Yeah. I think I must admit, the word creative or, creativity isn't something that I would readily associate with psychotherapy.
What a shame, though.
And I don't think a lot of people do that. Do you know what I mean? I think they think that we do have these structures that we follow and everything, but
Well,
to
we
be
can have
creative
both.
and, treat everybody as an individual, I think is amazing.
I think it's both. I think you're correct, because psychotherapists are often seen in the world of science.
Yeah.
I think I come from Freud and the idea of XXXX. But actually, if we're not modeling creativity, options, choice, I think it's something sorely missed.
Yeah. And opportunities can be missed, definitely. Yeah.
So
Another little podcast, Bob.
Yeah, if my therapist has got all these values, wow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. I think you've pretty much got all of those, and I think you instill those in the students that come to the Institute as well, Bob.
I don't know, but I do inspire to those values we're talking about. And hopefully some of my trainees in the last 30 years have aspired to them as well.
Yeah. So until next time, when we will be talking about, and I'm really looking forward to this one, the doorknob transaction in the therapy process and why it is so important.
Probably one of the most supervisory discussions that I've had in terms of commonality. In other words, many, many people bring this subject to me and the importance of it.
Yeah. Until next time, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show. Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.